we wanted to win it for South Africa. That's without a doubt. And you can see what's happening currently. Yeah, it just absolutely drove us. When they made a tackle half-time, when they came in, the chat was again about South Africa. It wasn't about the actual game plan. It was about the people back home watching TV, the messages. So half of it hard work, the other half was you guys.
The quality of depth in our Springbok squad is undoubtedly the envy of every rugby nation, thanks in large part to one Dr. Rassie Erasmus. But for our more seasoned players, possibly lifting the World Cup for a third time in a row is not a foregone conclusion come 2027.
Rassie Erasmus has been the most impossible coach to predict over the last 6 or 7 years. There's just been surprise after surprise in almost everything he's done.
That's our rugby reality, according to our Sport 24 editor Lloyd Burnard, who joins us in our Cape Town studios next. And later in the show, we shouldn't be surprised, but Mzansi's inmates are living the high life behind bars. And could Rooibos tea be the protection petrol attendants need? Well, my name's Graham Robenheimer. Let's chat all this and more right here on The Lead on News 24. Rassie Erasmus is a modern-day coaching mastermind because of the way he handles the Springboks' more senior players. Well, that's the argument from our Sport 24 editor, Lloyd Burnard, and I still reckon he's putting that probably fairly mildly, and he joins me now in our Cape Town studios. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Graham. Thanks for having me in here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so keen to finally change things up a little bit. We had Paul Herman the other day chatting good news with us, and now we get to move a little bit away from the hard news mill and talk rugger for a little bit. Take us through, as per your piece on the front page of News 24 today, take us through the current crop of Springbok players approaching the sort of mid-30s mark at the moment, and what that means when we head down under eventually for the next Rugby World Cup in 2027.
Yeah, it's been a big talking point since South Africa won the World Cup in 2023, I guess, and there've been comparisons that have been made to what happened to the Springboks in 2007 when they won under Jake White and what was his last year as Springbok coach, and then it moved over to Peter de Villiers. And, a lot of the criticism that lingers around the Bok team that went to the 2011 World Cup in New Zealand was that it was a bit old. A lot of those players were survivors of the 2007 side. You had John Smith there still. You had Victor Matfield, a few guys who were, probably the wrong side of 30, nearer 35. And similar concerns exist now, I guess. So it's certainly not panic stations for anyone. But it has been a talking point since the last World Cup, especially after the celebrations and everything's died down, and you start looking ahead to 2027, and you start looking at the players that are still involved in the current setup, and there are quite a few of them. You start with the captain, Siya Kolisi, who's 33 years old, Francois Hadbra's 34, Bongio Bonambi's 34, Trevor Nyakane is 35, Franco Mostert's 34, Damien Dialendi is 33, Peter Steff's 32, Kobus Reinach 35, Makazole Mapimpi 34, Aka van der Merwe is 33. He's in the mix in the camp, even though he's not, playing at the moment. But yeah, a fair chunk of players, and also very good players, key players who've been instrumental in South Africa. I was about to say,
huge fan favourites there. And in your piece, I love that you honed in on Deon Fourie. I mean, for me and my brother, he's quite a firm favourite as well. We had a late brother in the family that was also a hooker once upon a time, and we always think about, what would be for our late brother Lloyd, also Lloyd.
Yeah.
What would his career have turned out, if he had did very well at club rugby in Mpumalanga? And then you look at Deon Fourie's story,
sure,
and it's fantastic. He is arguably probably my favorite player at the moment, and to see his story has been nothing short of awesome. He's 38 now. What does that mean for his future come 2027? Is it a foregone conclusion, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see Deon Fourie still being in the Springbok mix in 2027. Obviously, he'd be 40 by the time that next World Cup rolls around. But as I said in the piece, Rassie Erasmus has been the most impossible coach to predict over the last 6 or 7 years. There's just been surprise after surprise in almost everything he's done. Look, Deon Fourie is one of the great South African rugby stories. His fairy tale in 2023 was unrivaled, really. I mean, the way he had to play the bulk of that World Cup final, having come from a place in his rugby career where, almost certainly he would have thought there's no way that this ends with me becoming a Springbok. Given that reality and everything he's achieved since, he has been one of the most incredible box stories. I think what's important about this is that Rassie is not throwing anyone away. If you're still hitting the metrics, if you still have your battle stats up to a certain standard, Deon Fourie is still playing good rugby. Had a good game on the weekend for the Stormers. You've got Siya Kolisi still playing fantastic rugby for the Sharks. If you're still there and you're still hitting your numbers, hitting your metrics, and putting in the performances that have made you a Springbok already up until now, then he's not going to throw you away. He's kind of leaving it up to the players. You can keep going with this for as long as you want. As long as you playing like this, you can stay. And it leaves it in the hands of the players. I think it's a great showing of respect from the coach to the players that he leaves it in their hands, because it would be such an easy, convenient time now for the coach to draw a line in the sand and say, right, 2027 is coming up. Realistically, Deon Fourie, Willie Leroux, Bongi Mbonambi, Frans Malherbe, you guys aren't going to make it to the next World Cup. It's pointless us playing you now. It's better to draw a line in the sand. He hasn't done that. He's kept them all in there. You're keeping all of that IP in the camp. They're working with the youngsters, and he's saying, keep going as long as you can. If your numbers start dipping and you get to that point where the body starts packing in, then we'll make the call and say, listen, maybe it's time to move on. But until that happens, keep doing what you're doing.
And of course, the piece that we're alluding to is Lloyd Burnard's opinion piece, Rassie's golden oldie Bok messaging, another clear example of what separates him. I thought one reader's comment as per your piece was quite illuminating. This person had written, Rassie is in a class of his own. I would take the front row forwards, props in particular, off the oldies list. They only mature in their mid to late 30s. Your response to that, Lloyd?
Yeah, sure. I mean, your props do go, significantly longer. In rugby, I mean, we'll remember big Os du Randt, who just seemed like he would never ever stop for the Springboks. So no, fair point. Stephen Kitsoff is an interesting example. I mean, he was 32 or 33. I can't remember exactly when he retired. But you've got Frans Malherbe there now, who's 34. Look, I think in the case of a guy like Frans Malherbe, and Trevor Nyakane, guys like that, yeah, sure. I mean, you could push it that far to 2027. The big thing with the front row and the tight five in particular is what's of interest to me is how they, and Kitsoff alluded to this after his retirement, but the demands change in terms of what's expected from a front rower. And as attacks evolve and as the demands of the game evolve, so do the demands on the physicality of the player. It's no longer just about being a big, strong scrummager. You've got to get around the park, you've got to have the hands, you've got to have the mobility and the athleticism. And with Tony Brown coming into the box setup and tweaking the way they attack, I think that's going to be more of a factor. And I wonder how a guy like Frans Malherbe, for example, might fit into an attack that might require a bit more in terms of mobility. So sure, props can go longer, but I think the demands of the traditional Springbok prop will probably change a bit over the next couple of years.
And Lloyd, you kind of, for me, center your piece a lot around the example set by Stephen Kitsoff following his retirement. It, of course, a bitter pill for all rugby fans to swallow, but his response and attitude is essentially what has set him aside as the epitome of a fantastic Springbok, who could have had a little bit more left in the tank coming up to 2027, but he's saying, hey, I might not have.
Yeah. No, what a great ambassador for Stormers and South African rugby. I mean, he will go down as one of the greats, and especially in these parts. I mean, they love him here in Cape Town. That injury was so unfortunate, a bit of a freak injury, happens in a Currie Cup game and incredibly dangerous, and he considers himself very lucky to still be walking and breathing, never mind the rugby career, because it could have gone a lot worse. But it was interesting to listen to him talk after retiring, because one of the first questions he got asked was, geez, hard luck on 2027, because this means you've been robbed of the chance for a three-peat and to go for 3 World Cups in a row. And he went, listen, it would have been great. I mean, I would have pushed it as far as I can. But if I'm honest with myself, that would have been a stretch. He says he knew kind of after 2023 already that, and again, going back to the demands and how they're changing in terms of what's expected of props in the modern game, he kind of looked at it and went, oof, I'll be 35, 36 then. I'm not sure. And he spoke to the crop of youngsters coming up behind him and speaks of a player who's actually kind of at peace now with leaving the game behind him, and it just made me wonder, if Kitsoff now retired can look at it and go, I'm not sure I would have had the gas in the tank to get all the way to 2027. He can say that now because he's speaking from a place of freedom. Rugby is not an option for him anymore. The guys who are still in the mix can't speak like that. They can't say, geez, I don't think I'm going to get there.
That's an excellent point.
And I wonder how many of them have that kind of lingering doubt as well, where they're looking at it going, oof, that is quite a way off. But again, that's why I think the way that Rassie's handling it is so impressive, because he's going, let's not look too far ahead into the future. It's actually a futile exercise. There's no point as practicing and playing now with trying to predict how you're going to look in 2027. Let's follow the data. Let's follow the metrics of where you are this week, next game, the game after that, and see where you are. And if you're still hitting those metrics, you're still in. And if you start dipping and there's others that are outperforming you, then you're out.
Your take on Willie Leroux? He's just come out of minor surgery as well. It appears to have been like a minor shoulder neck injury, but something that's a bit of a legacy issue apparently that he's had for a while. Do you feel like his clock is also ticking against him somewhat or not?
Yeah, look, I mean, Willie is exactly in that bracket where if you go, 2027 is looking a long way away. It's an interesting conversation because of the 98 test caps that he's on, and he needs 2 more to get to 100, which would be a fantastic achievement. And I don't think anyone could argue that Willie doesn't deserve to get there. I mean, he absolutely does. He's been a stalwart for South African rugby. It's just there's Apelele Fassi behind him in his prime. There's still Damian Willemse in the mix. There's Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu who can play fullback as well. So you just look at the weapons you have in your arsenal and go, even if Willie had a couple more years on his side, moving ahead to 2027, there probably are other players there that I would suggest are ahead of him in the pecking order. But no, I mean, he's still going. He's been huge for the Bulls this season. He's played fly half for them. He's back at fullback now, having a little strategic injury break now to get the surgery done. He'll be back for the URC playoffs and is still one of, the Bulls are the highest ranked South African team on the URC table, and Willie Leroux is, you could argue, one of their most important players in that team. So, I mean, he is still contributing to the Bulls, to South African rugby, and playing at an incredibly high level. So, it's not going to be a sentimental, he has 2 caps and get to 100. I mean, I don't think they would do that. The price of a test cap is too important to Rassie Erasmus and the Springbok setup. So, I think he'll earn those caps. But yeah, 2027 is, looking a long way away for someone like Willie.
I'm very amped for the upcoming fixtures this year. Of course, from around July, we've got Italy and Georgia. And then those are, of course, at home. I don't think the venues have been announced yet. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Lloyd. And
a few have.
Oh, have they? And I'm interested to hear those from you. And then stretching up until like September, of course, the big ones overseas, down under again, but this time in New Zealand. Sure, those are going to be big ones to watch. Who in your mind, you've mentioned a couple of names. It only took us 10 minutes to talk about Sasha. But his name, of course, I would think is undoubtedly, as a Sport 24 editor, it's up there with some of the big names that you're sort of closely following as we go into this test series later this year, right?
No, it is exciting, and the hype is one thing, but then, Saturday is his first game back, and watching him start at 10 for the Stormers on the weekend. And it took about 20 minutes of that game before you go, oof, this guy is seriously good. I mean, he seems to have everything, the big boot, the physicality, the touch, the defense, the tactical awareness. I mean, there's not really too many faults that you can find in his game. He's just got to stay fit and start stringing together some months of rugby. But yeah, the season opens. I mean, there's 15 matches this year.
It's a lot.
Which is a lot of games. I mean, the first one is not an official test match. It'll be the Barbarians. That's a venue yet to be determined. But I mean, that's always a great spectacle. But it's just it's a packed season. The inbound tour, sure, not as glamorous as we would normally like. You got Italy and Georgia coming over, and possibly Japan sneaking in for a second Cape Town test in the window between that and the Rugby Championship. The Rugby Championship is what it is. It's always, tight against the All Blacks. That's going to be a lot of fun. You want to win that one every year. So that's going to be the first real test for the Springboks this year, is can they defend their Rugby Championship crown? And then what I'm looking particularly forward to is the end of year tour, because you've got France and Paris and Ireland in Dublin and England at Twickenham. Those are three massive games, particularly the France and Ireland game. France, I think, are increasingly looking like the biggest contenders to South Africa's number one spot at the moment. So no, it's packed in terms of personnel. I think what's going to be interesting is seeing, because I think the plans for 2027 will start properly now with this year. Combinations, guys playing together who Rassie thinks potentially could work at the next World Cup. You want to give a guy like Sasha game time at 10, surely. The guys who he knows what he gets out of them. So your Pollards and your Faf de Klerks and, maybe Damien Delendes. And, I think there'll be guys where he goes, I know what I can get out of these guys, so I'm not going to run them into the ground. And I think we might hopefully see a few new combinations with him starting to look ahead to the future. But it's going to be good. I mean, we feel so starved of it when there's no Bok rugby on in these summer months. So I think once it comes back in mid-year, it's going to be good.
Full disclosure, I didn't watch all the Six Nations as much as I did last year, because I happened to be in the United Kingdom last year watching some of that, and of course caught some of the World Cup when I was in the UK as well. Trust me, being on your ace as a Springbok supporter in the north of England is daunting in any place that you'll find, because if you just utter two words, Lloyd, and they pick up that you're South African, you attract a lot of unnecessary attention. But of course, Ireland was the big talk of the town then, and when you look at the Six Nations, Ireland wasn't as great as I thought they would be. Your view there, because now they've slipped in the world rankings, as I understand it, to third place in the men's ranking sides, and then it's South Africa first, and then followed close hot in the heels by the All Blacks, and then Ireland in third. France really showed that grit. But your view on Ireland, because I know there's always that special rivalry when it comes to Rassie and the Springboks.
Yeah, they've been certainly in the Rassie Erasmus era. I think those games have been incredible. They obviously beat South Africa at the last World Cup as well. Look, I don't know from a national team point of view what went wrong in the Six Nations, if anything did internally there. Looking at the URC and Leinster, and they still top of that log and almost unbeatable. I mean, it's taken 14 games or 15 games for somebody to finally knock over their B team in the URC. So I think, sure. I mean, you can read into it if you. The other thing is the world rankings. I don't think anyone, involved at an elite level of rugby is too concerned at this stage with what the world rankings say. I mean,
agreed.
The World Cups and the trophies and the Six Nations titles and the Rugby Championship titles mean a bit more, rightly so. So no, I certainly wouldn't read too much into the world rankings or the Six Nations and start thinking that Ireland are on the way down. I think the systems there are just so good, and the alignment there is just so impressive that come the end of the year, that and France will be our two really, really big tests on the India tour.
We like to keep it fresh here on the lead on News 24. The latest being that now MTN, just as a sort of talking shop a little bit, MTN's now ended its official sponsorship of the Springboks, so you won't see the MTN bigger logo on the jersey anymore. Was that just the end of a contract deal, and then suddenly we're going to get a new sponsorship soon?
Yeah, it's obviously that was the news that we got this morning, and it was certainly interesting. MTN have been there for the glory years of the Boks. I mean, if you remember before that, we were chatting now just before I came in here, and we think it was Blue Label Telecoms, or they had the jersey over those Alistair Coetzee years, which obviously shame weren't the best for South African rugby, and then MTN kind of came in at the perfect time and joined got their brand on the jersey just as things were about to turn around. So no, I don't know what happened there. Just that I was chatting to an SA Rugby senior official this morning, and I said, "What's going on here?" And I said, "Have we missed something? Who's going to be on the jersey now? Do we know anything?" He said, "No, it hasn't been announced yet, but they have got two sponsors, confirmed. So they'll confirm shortly who's going to be on the jersey, and we understand that it's quite lucrative, as you would expect. I imagine the front of a Bok jersey these days is quite expensive real estate.
Yeah, 100%. So perhaps MTN's loss at the end of it.
I don't think it's News 24 that's going to be on there.
With Lloyd's face on the front, that would be class. Speaking of you, Lloyd, any other books in the offing? I didn't know this about you. The, in fact, author of 3 books, one of which is Miracle Men, How Rassie Springboks won the World Cup. How was the reception for that book for you? And anything up on the horizon?
Yeah, I loved that book. It feels like a lifetime ago now. It's been out for years already. I think it came out in 2020, and now very proud of it looking back. I mean, it was a great experience and led to a couple more. I mean, it's 3 books, but I'll call it 2 books because the first one was all me, and then the next one were, I'll take half for each because I did Nick Mallett's insights into the 2023 Rugby World Cup with Nick, who was brilliant, and then the last one, Twice the Glory, the greatest Springbok team in history, was done with my esteemed colleague Kaniso Chwaku in our Joburg newsroom, who's also just the most hardworking, diligent journalist I've ever met in my life. So I mean, those last 2 projects were very much shared. But yeah, happy with how it all turned out. Great opportunity to do that. Very glad I've gotten myself into that space and have enjoyed it. But for the time being, I think we were chatting a little bit before we got on here, and it just the time demands of it all, and how much it plays on your mind, in the process of writing and researching and everything, is something I'm quite keen to take a little bit of a break from, certainly for this year. So I don't think anything will happen this year, but you never know. I mean, the opportunities come, and something good enough arrives, and you can't really say no.
Well, fair enough. It's a lot that goes into a book. It's a lot of effort. Just a reminder, if you want to read Lloyd's piece, Lloyd Burnard, Rassie's golden oldie Bok messaging, another clear example of what separates him. That story on our front page of the News 24 sports section. Lloyd, thanks so much for chatting. I hope our next sport lead edition will be about the Proteas.
Yeah, that would be great. Jeez, I'll talk up a storm there as well.
And I know AB wants to get involved in that. Our editor-in-chief, Adrian Basson, he's a big cricket fan, right?
He is. He's got a soft spot for young Devil Brevis, who he reckons is going to be the next best everything. So we'll get AB on to talk about how great Brevis is going to be.
We've got more than enough material for our next line. Lloyd, thanks so much for your time. Have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Graham. Cheers.
Cheers. To our trending topic now. South Africa's prisoners certainly give new meaning to the term cell phone, because on average, at least 112 mobile devices were confiscated from the country's prisons every single day between January 2024 and January 2025. That's according to a parliamentary reply by Correctional Services Minister Pieter Groenewald to a question brought by the Democratic Alliance. All in all, that's nearly 42,000 cell phones. Meanwhile, around 4 kilograms of drugs and around 550 rand were seized every day. Also, nearly 270 litres of alcohol were taken during the same period. In Cape Town's Goodwood prison alone, more than 1,900 weapons like knives, scissors and screwdrivers have been uncovered by correctional services officials. And that's just the stuff they found. For more on News 24's coverage here, check out our article by journalist Marvin Charles under our South African news section. And finally, you might not know it, but South Africa's petrol attendants put their lives at risk every day. Long-term exposure to petrochemical fumes is proving to be hazardous to their health. But researchers over at the National Institute for Occupational Health are now conducting a study to determine how one can mitigate this. And the Rooibos tea may well be the answer. Among our country's finest exports, the study is testing whether or not 3 cups of the herbal tea may keep respiratory issues, skin irritation, and blood disorders at bay. They tested conditions on more than 100 petrol station workers in South Africa, with half drinking 250 millilitres of the tea 3 times a day for 6 months, whilst the others didn't, but were given access to the usual occupational health guidelines. Now, the final results of the study are currently outstanding until later this year, but the researchers reckon looking into Rooibos' antioxidants are well worth exploring. Until then, we wait. And thanks to our journalist Nicole McCain for that story. From rucks, Rassie and rugby to patrolling our prison playgrounds. That's been our show, and we want your feedback. Mail your comments and voice notes to thelead@24.com to be included in our next edition. Daily episodes drop on News 24, Spotify and Apple Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m. My name's Graham Robenheimer. So long as there's news, we'll have the lead.